Checking in on Football in Focus, Shane's Rib Shack for a Thursday night. So you're going to get started this evening. Got some Northwest Group of football players coming in. Got American football and English football tonight too. A little English football on the American side of things. Got Stuart Barefoot with us from UNC-G, and he is a graduate from there. And
correct.
And they've got a big homecoming coming up this weekend. So we take Football in Focus and kind of focus in on some UNC-G thoughts as well. First of all, Stuart, tell us about the UNC. First of all, welcome to the program.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. This is cool.
And what about some of your involvement at UNC-G as far as being involved with the different teams, different sports, and different media aspects?
Pretty minimal involvement at the moment, just doing a little PA announcing for some of their teams, primarily women's volleyball and then softball in the spring, filling in for women's basketball and a few other sports in between. But you know, UNC-G graduate, spent some time doing some sports radio there and covering a number of different teams for their paper. So any chance I get to go to a UNC-G game or do any coverage of them, I jump at for sure.
So you got working with UAG, also the paper is called the Carolinian?
Carolinian, correct.
Carolinian, yeah. And then doing some other work as well. What about the when, where, and what's going on with the soccer homecoming game this weekend?
All right, well, it's a weekend full of stuff. So I guess the headlining game is men's soccer team is going to be hosting Georgia Southern. That's Saturday night at 7:30. That's at the UNC-G Soccer Stadium. The men's soccer team, they're 7-6-1 overall in the year.
Okay.
Got a big win over Charlotte when they were ranked, but they've also had some losses to some inferior opponents.
They got off to a good start, didn't they?
3-0, I think. Before they lost 3 in a row. And Coach Mullen, I know him, really good coach, super nice guy, and he and I talk about it occasionally. And he said essentially what you and I just said. They got off to a really good start, but have since then been kind of inconsistent and up and down. But I think being a mid-major school is a blessing and a curse. There's no at-large bid. They could run the table during the tournament and go to the NCAA. The downside of that is there's been seasons where they've had really good teams and have won the regular season and then lose in the tournament. And it's almost like a season loss because they can't go to the big dance.
Well, they've had some pretty good success over the past decade with men's soccer, right?
Men's soccer and women's soccer.
Oh yeah, women's soccer was really strong. I know it probably still is, but had a good thing going with Eddie Radwanski was there. Radwanski was on board for a while, had a good solid program going in.
His last season at UNC-G, they finished 10th in the nation. Lost in the first round. It was a bizarre game. I remember some friends and I were watching that online. They streamed it and they lost on an own goal. So I always feel like
was that a 1-0 game?
It was a 1-0 game.
On an own goal.
South Carolina. I feel like if they played South Carolina 10 more times, they'd win all 10 of them. So that was a bad stroke of luck. But women's volleyball is going to be hosting a few games as well. They're going to be playing Wofford on Friday and Sanford on Saturday. Both games are at 6 p.m. So if you get a chance to check that. College volleyball is really cool. It's always played in a small gymnasium, and it's just an absolutely ruckus atmosphere.
Tight construction there, too. Tight configuration as far as the court and what the ladies are doing on the court. Yeah,
it's a really small, and it's really fun because you have the pep band in there, you have the cheerleaders and dance team, and you have a lot of students there, and it's always a blast.
What's the one position this volleyball these days? I see it occasionally on TV, we've had it in the paper, that a lot of us aren't familiar with, maybe from our days of following volleyball in the past. They've got one position now. What's that title for that spot on the team?
You have the libero.
There you go. That's the one.
A different color jersey.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
They can sub in and out.
That's kind of something new to volleyball, I guess, in some ways in the past 25 years. Back in the day, you didn't see that quite as much, but I guess that's something that's kind of changed a little bit then.
Yeah, and it gives the coaches a lot more options in terms of their rotation, and kind of like a super sub type player. But yeah, women's volleyball, really great group of players they have right now. Coach Patrick Nicholas does a really good job with those ladies. And
I guess it's the coach with the most tenured UNC-G right now. One of the most tenured coaches would be the tennis coach, Jeff.
The men's tennis. I'm blanking on his last name.
I remember him from a few years ago. This guy's been there. I mean, maybe the longest. But the soccer coach, how many years does he have the post now?
Well, both of them. Coach Nugent for the women's soccer team. This would be his third season, I believe, or his third season. And Coach Mullen, it's technically his third season as the head coach. He was the interim head coach for his first year.
And took over for Coach Parker?
Yeah, right after Parker left.
Does Parker still come around any?
Michael Parker, I believe believe he's at some of the games, you know.
Yeah,
I don't really have much interaction with him, but, you know, he was there so long. I have a hard time believing he's just walked away.
Yeah, really. I know his son was a player. I think he may have played for Page, and then some of the local kids. I guess you've got some kids maybe from the local area that attend UNC-G and play soccer there too.
Yeah. I mean, they recruit well in the area, and the good thing about, you know, UNC-G being such a big program, they recruit, you know, all over the place. I know last season or the season before, there were several people on the women's team from California, and that's like, you know, that's a hotbed for soccer.
What about, again, set the scene for us for the homecoming soccer game this Saturday? Time, frame, that type thing again.
7:30 at UNC-G. It's going to be
opponent once again?
Georgia Southern.
Georgia Southern.
Who's not doing so well this year. So it's a big chance for UNC-G to really gain some ground on the conference standings. They're up there among, you know, the best. I want to say the top 3 or 4. So a good chance to get a good seed in the Southern Conference tournament. And, you know, like I said, if they can run the table, you know, they'll punch a ticket to the big dance.
How well is the homecoming game attended usually?
Usually get pretty good turnouts. I didn't go last year, but my junior and senior years, well into the thousands.
Not bad. I can remember a day back when they were Division III. It's been eons ago, back I guess in the, must have been the mid to late 80s, back when they didn't have even, it was Division III at the time, didn't even charge admission to the games. They had that hill now where the stadium's kind of cut in that hill. I mean, back in their Division III days, they used to pack them in over there. It was kind of like a drawing card, kind of like the thing to do in town. I guess UNC-G is still trying to find that niche again with the local community as far as being a soccer draw.
Yeah, I guess, you know, they've struggled in that capacity. They're trying for every sport. You know, they're really trying to market basketball as sort of a big-time program.
Well, some of the sports, toss it around here, some of the sports, they don't even charge admission anymore, do they? I know the baseball games, I guess you could get in free for every game, right?
Yeah, baseball.
They had the big deal a couple years ago, get it free on Fridays, but then I guess they turned that around and made it free for all games.
I think every sport now, except I don't really speak for UNC-G. I'm not really on this. I should say that I'm not on this program as an official representative. I'm just as a freelance sports guy.
Kind of an ambassador in some ways.
Yeah, as a freelance sports guy who knows a lot about UNC-G and enjoys covering them. I'm not here. They didn't send me here. I feel like I should say that.
You were actually recruited, but not recruited by UNC-G, recruited by us.
Yeah, there you go.
Good deal.
There you go. To tell someone I've been recruited at some point.
What about this basketball situation now? We talked about the soccer, big homecoming game against Georgia Southern this Saturday, UNC-G Soccer Stadium. What about the basketball? Practice has already begun. The first game is probably, what, November the 8th?
Yeah, it's got to be coming up, and you know what? I have not done my homework on basketball, so I can't tell you who they're.
What do you think about the past couple of years? Is this team headed in the right direction by what you've been watching?
Yeah, it seems like it with Wes Miller taking over as the head coach. I mean, he made an immediate impact. I feel like he really utilized his team's speed and using the full court. They played a real half-court game when Mike DeMint was there, and it never really seemed to work out because they're not a really big team. They're fast, but they were never really big, and they got killed in the half-court game. So Coach Miller really took that Carolina style, you know, that he learned from Roy Williams. You know, fast-paced offense, using 3 guards a lot of times, and that worked well for him. You know, his first season or his first half season. When he
first took over that first half season, it was like a difference in night and day when he grabbed the reins and took charge of the team. They were just unreal. I think they actually won their side of the conference that first year.
Yeah, and you remember that Miami game? They almost beat Miami.
Exactly.
Trev Simpson had like 36 points. So
that was their big man at that time, Trev Simpson, right?
Yeah, and then, you know, he's gone now. He's gone. He's not back for his senior year. So I think last year, I guess a lot of people would say it was a bit of a letdown. You know, the
expectations pretty high going into last year, and this did not meet that at all.
Yeah, well, they played well a lot of times last year. At times, you know, they played phenomenally well at times, but they could never really. I guess, you know, they couldn't really play with a lead. I guess they would get up on these teams and the guys would come storming back, or the opposite would happen. They'd get off to such a poor start and play well the rest of the game, but couldn't.
First couple of years, the big draw, I guess, has been not only who UNC-G has on their side of the court, but also on the other side of the court, some of the opposition they played at the Coliseum, and they bring in these ACC teams. Sometimes that's more the lure than the actual home team in many cases.
Yeah, well, I remember when they played Duke 3 years ago, and Mike Krzyzewski surpassed Dean Smith on the all-time wins list. That place sold out. It was all Duke fans.
Yeah.
But they've had a number of ACC schools come, and I think they've got a game with Carolina either next year.
They do. It's going to be in Chapel Hill, I think, this year. Maybe they're going to get them in the Coliseum the next year.
Yeah, it'll probably be like a home and away type thing. I don't know if it's.
It's good for the ACC teams to come to town, kind of get on that ACC tournament court before the tournament hits in March.
Well, sure, yeah. It's a home away from home for all these teams.
Certainly. What about the Major League Baseball? World Series began last night, and the Red Sox ran out to a big start, had a reversal of a call, had another big home run. I mean, things seem to be going the Red Sox way in maybe the past month, in fact.
All right, well, first of all, as a Braves fan, I think it was some retributive justice to see a call go not necessarily the wrong way, but to see a questionable call go against the Cardinals. They've had it coming for over a year now. But no, the umpires got that. If you're talking about that one at second base where they didn't turn the double play, the umpires got that one right. You know, he didn't. I think the initial call was that he dropped it on the transfer, but he never had it, and I never really noticed his foot on the bag.
They talked about reversing the curse. Now they've reversed the call, I guess, in last night's game, right?
Yeah.
Well, you did your preview at the website. Who did you predict to take the series?
I have the Red Sox going in 7. It just seems like they have a few more weapons for them. They're a gritty bunch. I feel like, baseball is such a specialized sport. Everyone's sort of special, even, to the point where your bullpen's so specialized.
Oh, yeah.
You have a 7th inning guy. You have a guy who sets up the closer. You have a guy who only goes against lefties. The Red Sox,
you got guys that come in and throw to one batter and they're done.
Yeah, and the Red Sox really aren't that kind of team. They're just a gritty bunch. I heard someone compare them to like a beer league softball team. They
look like it in some ways with their beards.
Or like a punk rock band of some sort with all their beards and tattoos.
Kind of an elder punk rock band, yeah.
They just kind of
look a little bit like those guys, which I know nothing about, but I'll just use a comparison because I've seen a few photographs and real quick shots of these guys. This Duck Dynasty bunch of those crazy beards look like those guys a little bit too.
Yeah, they might have to make a special appearance on Duck Dynasty if they win the World Series. But they just kind of show up for every game and do what they got to do to win. Typically, traditional thinking is that the DH sort of favors the National League because they get to use one, but then they don't. The AL doesn't get to use one. But I think that's going to really help the Red Sox. Still have Mike Napoli coming off the bench when they play in St. Louis. And what I like about pinch hitters is it gives the manager sort of the luxury of inserting them into the game in a situation that caters well to them. So maybe I don't know enough about Mike Napoli, but maybe he hits well against right-handers with runners in scoring position.
I tell you, Mike Napoli was tough a couple of years back with the Rangers. I know he was tough there, and he's been a good find for the Red Sox. You look at the Red Sox team, it's like you take a bunch of guys people don't know that much about, put them around David Ortiz, and you have yourself a pretty good group.
But hasn't that been their MO? That's the 2004 team that won the World Series. I mean, there was a few guys like Manny Ramirez and Kurt Schilling.
They had a guy on one of the interview shows the other day was I think he was in that 2004 team, a big contributor back then, Trot Nixon. I almost forgot about him. He was part of the group back in that day.
Yeah, I mean, that was a fun group of guys. A very similar dynamic to what's going on right now in 2011. 2007, I think, had a few more superstars on their team when they won it. This group of guys is really good. If you disagree with me about that pick about Boston, you're not crazy. It's two very evenly matched teams. St. Louis is really good.
And like you say, if it were to go 7 games as you predicted, it could turn out to be a series. It could sway one way or the other as you head toward Game 7.
Oh yeah, I mean Game 7, anything can happen. So you'll see. But what was clear last night was the layover seemed to hurt St. Louis a lot more. These guys, baseball players more so than other athletes, are real creatures of habit, and their routine just gets thrown off completely in the playoffs. One day they're pitching on short rest, the other day they haven't pitched in 9 days. So
exactly,
it was tough, and Adam Wainwright just didn't have it last night.
Stuart Barefoot with us again. He is in tonight at Football in Focus, Shane's Rib Shack, and we've talked about Major League Baseball, talked about the English version of American football, soccer at UNC-G, 7:30 on Saturday, homecoming game for the UNC-G Spartans. Let's talk about the ACC football a little bit too. Another big weekend coming up, and had a large game last weekend. Turned out to be large to the advantage of Florida State over Clemson, but some other key games this weekend. NC State goes down to Florida State, got their quarterback returning. It was injured to start the season. Mr. Mitchell's back, and you look at North Carolina, they're in a have-to-win situation, not a must-win, but a have-to-win situation. They're going to resolve anything with this season at all as they're facing this week in Boston College. You just keep waiting for the heels of 2012 to show up. They've not shown up yet this year because some of those guys are gone. Giovanni Bernard's gone on to better things, but they got to find that tailback spot, got to get that working. I think they got the Eric Ebron thing working last Thursday night at Shane's Rib Shack. We were watching some of that, and that seemed to be doing pretty well for them. They got to do more than that, though, if they're going to get that second win.
Well, he dominated Miami's defense last week. That was a great thing. Brent Renner doesn't seem to be as sharp Yeah, but I think you said it was in terms of their offense. I mean, Gio Bernard, now he's with the Bengals. That's where their offense went. Not that the other guys didn't contribute, but I mean, he was definitely the centerpiece of it. He added a lot of speed. I mean,
the best thing he had going too, he not only had the running back spot, the way Fedora did when he came in. If you're going to be a part of this team, you got to play special teams as well, and forcing him to play special teams turned out to be a huge bonus for them. He's taking punts back for touchdowns, kickoffs back for touchdowns, did so many different things.
Yeah, I mean, the spread offense, it really works based on whether or not you have the personnel for it. So, yeah, must win for Carolina. They're 0-3, and it's kind of hard to tell. With UNC, they're not a traditional powerhouse in football. So when they're playing really well, it's always hard to determine whether or not they're on the up and up or if they're peaking. And every time, every few years when they have a really good season, it appears that they've peaked because they don't ever seem to put great seasons back to back.
And who would have dreamed that Duke would have been the prime team right now among the Big Four schools? Duke is the prime team right now, 5-2 record, chance to go 6-2, get the bowl eligible deal going even quicker than they did last year. But Duke's having a heck of a year.
Well, you read in my article last week where I said of the North Carolina schools, before last week, they were the only ones who they had the best record in the conference. Actually, I'm sorry, Wake Forest did.
Yeah, they had a conference win.
Yeah, they were the only ones who had a conference win. Duke had the best record. So it's almost like the NFL in the sense it's a lot of parity going on. But Duke's played really well. I mean, David Cutcliffe coming in from Tennessee
he's proven he's very good at his craft, working with those offenses and those quarterbacks. And he has stayed the course. That's what he had to do, and Duke had to stick with him. By sticking with him, now they're starting to get rewards and benefits from that.
Yeah, Duke, they've got their starter back now as well. So, they'll continue to go on the up and up. I guess it's sort of a luxury when you haven't had a lot of great seasons. I think it gives the coach a little breathing room there to kind of...
Especially if they're showing some promise, which they were, and just kind of stay with Cutcliffe. And he's an older guy. He's worked with the Mannings. He's worked with all these fine offensive players, and now it's starting to pay off for Duke too.
Yeah, it's got to be tough. I feel bad for these coaches who go into somewhere like someone who's at Oregon for the first, his first year. You go into USC.
Even like someone at North Carolina, that could get pretty hot down there too in the winter.
Yeah, I mean, I think Larry Fedora's done a fine job with Carolina. This season's been pretty bad. I mean, so you got to give him a little more of a chance to do some recruiting, get his personnel in there for a very specialized offense. So they might have a little bit of patience with him, but these bigger schools like Texas, I mean, Mac Brown, they're not going to. No. This is his last year.
Going to stick with Florida State to go ahead and take the conference on the championship game.
Yeah, I think last week proved that. Yeah. I was really careful in my preview not to hype the game up too much. I knew it was big. Everyone was saying it was the biggest in conference history, but there's always a tendency in these big games for one team to run away with it. I mean, Jameis, I don't know how you say the guy's I've heard about 10 different pronunciations for it, but Mr. Winston is a phenomenal quarterback. It was kind of hard to tell at first. They played some pretty,
not
their strength of schedule. A lot of teams they played were pretty bad. But that 63-0 win against Maryland and then putting up 51 against Clemson, definitely a Heisman contender. I don't think there's any question.
We've talked about the college a little bit. What about the Carolina Panthers? They're getting against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, the Panthers were in a situation a couple of weeks ago. It's like Ron Rivera is going to be gone before this season even gets halfway over. They're going to get rid of him because the Panthers lose those close games early and didn't show any promise after last year. But you get a guy like Tampa Bay, Greg Schiano, 0-6, and Tampa Bay's in terrible trouble. Now there's more heat on them than there is on the Panthers. That was completely different a few weeks back.
Yeah, for sure. Greg Schiano, I mean, there wasn't a lot of goodwill towards Josh Freeman, but a lot of people now, there's information starting to come out that there might have been, he was sort of running like, a campaign against Josh Freeman, and you're 0-6. I mean, people won't really tolerate anything, and that's why Josh Freeman's sort of malfeasance wasn't received too well. And yeah, Greg Schiano is going to be on the hot seat. I mean, you look at that roster and they should have a winning record, and they're 0-6.
What about the Panthers? Guaranteed win for them tonight?
It's never a guaranteed win with the Carolina Panthers, unfortunately. You never know. I think they should win though. They played really well last week. I like Steve Smith against Darrelle Revis. Darrelle Revis hasn't played well this year. They were fired up after last week. The fan base is ignited. It was a good thing that they got into all those little scruffs with St. Louis Rams. They needed that, and
it's always good to get those little scraps if you're the winning team. It always looks better.
Yeah, it does. It looks a lot better. And Cam Newton's played well the last 2 weeks.
He has. If he can put together another game, 3 in a row possibly for him.
Yeah, he's really the nucleus of their offense. When they were playing really well 2 years ago was when Cam Newton was having a phenomenal.
When they finished well last year, they finally went back to what he was doing the first year, and that's how they finished so strong last season.
Yeah, I think people need to be patient with that guy. He's still, he's like what, 23, 24?
That's about it.
Yeah. And what's their next best option? You're going to go put Derek Anderson or Jimmy Clausen in? I mean, he's their quarterback, for better or worse, and when he's at his best, he's really, really good.
Hit us one more time. Stuart Barefoot with us, Football in Focus, Shane's Rib Shack, kind of sports in focus. UNC-G, the big homecoming game this weekend. You plan to be there?
I'm hoping to go there. I have to be at women's volleyball at 6. But
might be an overlap.
Yeah. Well, I live right across from the stadium, so I can probably walk over there on my way home. So I should be there for the second half. But I'm looking forward to it. They should beat Georgia Southern and be in position to have a good seed for the Southern Conference tournament.
Listen, great to have you here tonight. First time you visited with us. Time to have you back again, Stuart, with us again. Stuart Barefoot from UNC-G, and also with GreensboroSports.com. Check out all of his previews, ACC football preview each week, and he has the MLB preview going as well. Keep up the good work. We'll see you soon.
All right, Andy. Appreciate it.
Got it. Stuart Barefoot.